Hello dear students, welcome back to the video lecture Cbse coaching. Today in this part of a video we are going to start a new chapter for the session 2024 and 25 which is motion. I guess आप लोगों ने basic idea motion का class 7th and 8th से ले लिया होगा, so we'll be taking up some basic idea as well as we'll understand what we have to learn in this chapter. So just to take the point here, so हमारे पास क्वेश्चन आता है कि अगर मैं आपको दो आर्टिकल दूँ, one bicycle and one car and few words which are moving around as you can see in the screen, what do we observe? We observe that objects are in motion, right? मतलब they are changing their the path, or we can say the with respect to the surrounding, they are just changing their position. So in this chapter we'll be learning the exact definition of motion, types of motion and the relevant phenomena. So let's just start. एक चीज़ हम इस तीनों बोल सकते हैं, इन तीनों ऑब्जेक्ट्स या आर्टिकल्स में हम देख सकते हैं, which is that all of these are in motion. But how do we define the part of motion? For this we'll be taking up an example जिसके हिसाब से हम देखेंगे कि how do we define basically in scientific term what is a motion. So let us consider an example of a car which is being observed by the observer. We see here that the car has moved. So why do we say the car is in motion? Because the position of this car is changing with respect to its surrounding. So that means if an object changes its position with respect to the surrounding, the object is in motion. So that's the basic definition or the theme of this chapter. For other example point of view, we can take this clock. If you see here, the position of the hands of the clock are changing continuously. Thus we say that the hands of the clock are in motion. If you see the second example, the water here in the river are also moving. That means the river water are changing its position continuously, and as we have defined earlier that anything which changes its position with respect to the surrounding is said to be in motion. So we can say that the water is in motion. And how can we forget the solar system? If you see here that due to the revolution, the position of the earth is changing continuously. Thus we say that the earth is in motion. So what is meant by the rest then? If changing the surrounding, if changing the position with respect to surrounding is motion, then how do we define the rest? As simple as that let us consider this car here with the same observer. With the passage of time, we see that the position of the car is not changing, so with respect to the surrounding. So we can say that the car is at rest. So any body or any object is said to be at rest when it does not change its position with respect to its surrounding. Thus we understand now what is rest and motion. Let's just understand this term, that motion is a relative term. Now इसका मतलब क्या है? We see here that anything, the examples which I had taken in the previous slide here, we have taken things which are inside the earth. If I observe, or the observer is lying outside the earth, अगर बाहर से, let's say moon or some spaceship, बाहर से अगर आप देखोगे, so there is nothing which is at rest inside the earth because the earth itself is in motion. So a body can be moving for an observer, at the same time it may be at rest for an observer. So motion is a relative term because it depends upon the observer itself. Now talking about the motion, we can classify the motion, or we will be understanding the two basic differences between a motion. The first one is the uniform motion, second one is the non-uniform motion. What is uniform motion? The motion in which the object covers equal distances in equal interval of time, then the object is said to be under a uniform motion. Let's, for an example, we have this clock. The hands of the clock covers equal distances in an equal time interval. Thus we say that the clock was in uniform motion. Whereas if the motion of an object or an object covers unequal distances in equal interval of time, distances unequal, equal interval of time, then it is said to be under a non-uniform motion. For an example, this bird while taking off or while landing has to cover an unequal distances in a seeming equal interval of time. Hence we can say that the distance of any flying object or a train or a bus which is leaving a platform or it is entering the platform is considered in physics as a non-uniform motion. So the bird which is flying covers unequal distance, hence it is considered to be an example of non-uniform motion. In a uniform motion, we'll understand and we'll keep in our mind that uniform motion के case में acceleration is 0. What is acceleration? We are going to define in the upcoming lectures. So in a uniform motion, the acceleration is 0, whereas in a non-uniform motion, the acceleration is constant. So how do we identify the different types of motion, like which one is the uniform motion and which one is the non-uniform motion? For an example, you'll be learning this in chemistry in this year itself, कि अगर हम किसी भी ऑब्जेक्ट का स्ट्रक्चर, किसी भी एटम का एटॉमिक स्ट्रक्चर देखते हैं, then in the middle there is a nucleus, and inside the nucleus we have proton and neutron. We'll understand and take up the example of the electron which moves around the circular orbit. So the motion of an electron around the nucleus, what do we say? Is it a uniform or a non-uniform motion? Particularly it's a uniform motion because it will be covering an equal distance in equal time interval. So equal distance is covered by the electron in an equal time interval, henceforth it is a uniform motion. What about the train which is entering or leaving the station? It is undoubtedly for the entire curriculum of the physics in class 9 onwards, we'll be considering this to be a non-uniform motion. Reason being, it covers an unequal distances in an equal interval of time, because it has to stop, take the passenger, and then it will have to gradually increase the speed. So it will be covering unequal distances in equal interval of time. Again, coming back to the clock, if you see motion of the hands of the clock, it is covering equal distances, equal time interval, henceforth it's a uniform motion. Next, if you look around the vehicles moving around in a traffic, they have to cover unequal distances in an equal interval of time, henceforth this is an example of a non-uniform motion. If you see the birds which are flying in the sky, again it has to cover unequal distances, or it covers unequal distances in an equal interval of time. It is a non-uniform motion. So henceforth we have defined what is uniform motion and what is non-uniform motion. तो I guess आपको ये दो टॉपिक बहुत अच्छे से क्लियर हो गया होगा. We'll be taking up an NCERT example to understand this better. Let's say there are these three friends, Amar, Akbar and Anthony, and they have their own car, and let us understand whose car is moving with what motion, be it a uniform or a non-uniform motion. So we'll be filling up the table with the clock time, the distance covered by each one of these. So the clock time was 5, 5:30, 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30 onwards till 8. And if you observe the time lapse, each time interval is an equal time interval which has a gap of 30 minutes. So we can say that we are taking, because to define both uniform and non-uniform motion, we'll be considering equal interval of time. So let's say when the time was 5, Amar's car covered 0 km, and then 20, then 40, 60, 80, 100 and 120. And if you observe it carefully, then the Amar's car is covering equal distances in an equal time interval which is 30 minutes. So we can say that the Amar's car is covering a uniform motion, or it is under a uniform motion. If we talk about the Akbar's car, then we say कि इसने 0 km, then 18, then 36, then 42, then 70, 95 and 120. And clearly we can see that the distances are unequal. Sometimes it's 18, 18, 6, 28, 25 and 25. We will not consider this to be a equal distances, although the time intervals are equal. Henceforth Akbar's car is covering, or it is under a non-uniform motion. Let's say and see what is up with the Anthony's car. Initially at 5 it was 0, then 14, 28, 42, 56, 70 and then 84. And if we take up the differences, we'll see that it is also covering an equal distance which is 14 km in each equal time interval of 30 minutes. Henceforth we can conclude that Akbar's and Anthony's car are under a uniform motion, whereas not the Akbar, Amar's and Anthony's car are under uniform motion, whereas Akbar's car is under a non-uniform motion. So let's just understand about the new topic, which is physical quantity. Physical quantity क्या है? anything that can be measured in a numeric value are considered to be a physical quantity. So in physics particularly हमारे पास दो टाइप के physical quantity है, but before that let's just elaborate a bit more about this physical quantity. Can a distance be measured? Answer is yes. Henceforth, distance is a physical quantity. Can a time be measured? Yes. Henceforth, time is also considered as a physical quantity. Can a mother's love or our parents' love be measured? Answer is no, not in a numeric value. Henceforth, it is not considered as a physical quantity. So, emotions will not take place in our curriculum of physics. Anything which can be measured with the help of some mathematical value or physical quantities. Otherwise, it's not a physical quantity. We have two types of physical quantity. One is called the scalar quantity. Another one is the vector quantity. So what is this physical quantity? Scalar quantity are the physical quantity which can be completely described by their magnitude or the numeric value alone. These are called the scalar quantity. So what is magnitude? Magnitude means the number or the value. Whereas the examples are time, because it can be measured and we don't need anything else to understand what is the time, 8 AM or 8 PM. Secondly, we have a mass. Mass can be measured without the direction, like we take it as a understood value that mass will be given with the SI unit. So it is a physical quantity which only then magnitude will make a sense without any other parameter. Henceforth, it is a scalar quantity. Whereas the physical quantities which possess both magnitude as well as direction are considered to be a vector quantity. For an example, force, right? If somewhere, अगर आप कभी देखते हो दरवाजे में push या pull लिखा होता था, तो push and pulling are basically nothing but the direction. So let's say to open up a door, you need this door, you need a 5 Newton of force, but it is not defined well whether you need to push it or pull it. और अगर let's say 5 Newton force आपने लगाया, but instead of pushing it, you are pulling it. Instead of pushing, आप pull कर रहे हो, so it will not open up. Even if you increase the magnitude of the force, 5 से 50 Newton भी कर दोगे, but the direction is not what is required, then also your desired result will not be coming up. Henceforth, कुछ physical quantity ऐसी होती है जिनमें सिर्फ numeric value नहीं बल्कि direction sense भी चाहिए होगा. These are considered as a vector quantity. I hope this much is clear. Let's move to the next example. Just like force, displacement is another quantity which we have to remember is also a vector quantity. Now let's just understand the units. Units are basically a system of measurement. When we say force is 5 Newton, that means 5 times the unit of force. So that's a system of measurement. So in units also we have a two diversion, two system of measurement hota hai isme bhi. One is the MKS unit and another one is a CGS unit. MKS का full form होता है मीटर किलोग्राम सेकेंड यूनिट सिस्टम. CGS will be centimeter gram second unit system. So it is also known as the SI unit. Which one? The MKS unit is also known as the SI unit, which is System International Unit, a standard unit we can say. Let's just understand the two concept of this two quantity, which is distance and displacement. Let us say this is we can say a playground from which an athlete will start its motion from point A, which is called the initial point A, and it has to reach to point B, which is considered to be as a final point. अगर कोई athlete A point से start करता है, an athlete is running the race, and from A to B it is covering this path here. Let's say the path length is 250 meter, and if I ask you what is the distance covered, then the athlete has covered from A to B. Moving from A to B, it has covered 250 meter. So this 250 meter is the actual path length which is covered. Henceforth, it is considered as a distance. Whereas, अगर ये athlete directly A to B straight line में आ जाता from the initial and the final point, then the shortest path length or the straight line distance which is covered from initial and final distance, let's say it is for this time being is 160 meter, then this one is known as a displacement. So what is displacement? The shortest distance between the initial and the final point is considered to be as a displacement. Let's say कि initial point A है, an athlete is running from A and then again moving back to the point A. So 250 plus 250, 500 meter का पूरा एक circle है. So if then athlete covers from A to A 500 meters, so the actual distance or the path length covered is 500 meter. Henceforth we can say that the path length which is covered from A to A is 500 meter. If I talk about the shortest distance, since in this case we have the initial and final point merging, or we can say that it is coinciding, then in this case displacement will be 0. This has to be kept in mind. Whenever an initial point and the final point is the same, in that case displacement might not be 0, it should not be 0, but the displacement will be 0, because displacement is the shortest distance between the initial and the final point. So if I say that from point A to B, if I want to summarize, the distance covered is 250 meter, whereas the displacement was 160 meter. But from point A to A, the distance covered was 500 meter, whereas the displacement was 0 meter. Now let's just understand the difference between this distance and displacement. So we'll make a note of it, distance and displacement. Distance is defined as the total path which is traveled by an object, whereas the displacement, this is the definition basically we are writing, the shortest distance measured from the initial to the final point of an object. Distance is a scalar quantity. We do not have to make any direction senses, because all we have to do is to write the magnitude, which can be positive, which should be positive only. So it has no direction sense. Whereas the displacement is a vector quantity which need both direction as well as the magnitude. It is either equal or greater than the displacement. Distance can never be negative. It is either equal to the displacement or it is always greater than the displacement. Like for an example, हमने यहाँ पे देखा था that distance displacement से बड़ा है, या तो maximum equal हो सकता है. किस केस में equal होगा, we'll come to know about this in later on. It is either equal or less than the distance. If you can see, both the cases the displacement value is smaller than the distance. Now let's say in which case the distance and displacement are equal. Let's say there is a car which is moving in a straight line, which is also known as a rectilinear motion. So if a straight line, if a car or any object is moving in a straight line, or it is under a rectilinear motion, then in that case the magnitude of distance and displacement are the same. Let's take up an NCERT question. An object has moved through a distance. Can it have a zero displacement? If yes, support your answer. Of course yes, अगर किसी object ने distance move करा है, then it might have a zero displacement. कैसे? Let's say that an object is this which is moving from A to B. Since it has moved from A to B, it has covered 30 km. In this case the distance and displacement both are same, but if in case it changes the direction of motion, A से B में गया and again coming back to B, again coming back to A, in this case the distance covered is 30 plus 30, which is 60 meter. The total distance is 60 meter, whereas since the final and initial point coincided, so displacement will be 0 meter. Taking up the next question here, which says that which of the following is true for the displacement? It can be 0, its magnitude is greater than the distance traveled by an object. किसके बारे में पूछ रहे हैं? Distance के बारे में. So both the statement is not true, because displacement magnitude can be 0. It is greater than the distance traveled by an object, which is not true. हमने देखा example में. So this was all about this part of the video. We'll be covering the next part in our next video. If you have enjoyed this session, then make sure to like this video, share with your friends, and do subscribe our channel. Thank you so much for watching this video.